Literary devices, symbolism and metaphors. What are literary devices? Literary devices or literary techniques are specific structures that writers often use to add meaning or create more compelling stories for the reader. These techniques can give the reader a greater understanding and meaning of the writer's intent. Symbolism. Symbolism is the use of symbols to signify ideas and qualities by giving them the symbolic meanings that are different from their literal sense. Symbolism can take different forms. Generally, it is an object representing another to give an entirely different meaning that is much deeper and more significant. Sometimes, however, an action and an event or a word spoken by someone may have a symbolic value. For instance, simile is a symbol of friendship. Smile is a symbol of friendship. Similarly, the action of someone smiling at you may stand as a symbol of the feeling of affection which that person has for you. Symbols do shift their meanings depending on the context in which they are used. A chain, for example, may stand for union as well as imprisonment. Thus, symbolic meaning of an object or an action is understood by when, where, and how it is used. It also depends on who reads the work. Symbolism examples. In our daily life, we can easily identify objects that can be taken as examples of symbolism, such as the following. A dove is a symbol of peace. A red rose, or the color red, stands for love or romance. Black is a symbol that represents evil or death. A ladder may stand as a symbol for a connection between heaven and earth. A broken mirror may symbolize separation. Symbolism in literature. Let's look at the following excerpt and discuss the symbolic value. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. We find symbolic value in Shakespeare's famous monologue in his play As You Like It. These lines are symbolic of the fact that men and women in the course of their lives perform different roles. A stage here symbolizes the world, and players is a symbol for human beings. I hear leaves drinking rain. I hear rich leaves on top, giving the poor beneath, drop after drop. 'Tis a sweet noise to hear these green leaves drinking near. In this beautiful poem, William Davies, who has used the symbol of rain to show the different classes of society. He does this by describing the way the upper leaves benefit from the rain first, and then hand down the rest to the lower leaves, the same way rich people pass on leftover benefits to poor people. So here, the symbolism lies under leaves and rain. Now you try. Take a minute. Can you explain the symbolism of these following images? Colin Kaepernick can symbolize what? Possibly freedom from oppression. Specifically, this is a symbolic reference to the Black Lives Matter movement. This is something that most Americans would understand and would have full context for. The second image, a dove holding an olive branch, represents hope and peace. The third image, the Statue of Liberty and the American flag, represent freedom. Each of these images has its own symbolic value and its own symbolic meaning. Functions of symbolism. Symbolism gives a writer the freedom to add double levels of meaning to his work. A literal one that is self-evident, and the symbolic one whose meaning is far more profound than the literal. Symbolism, therefore, gives universality to the characters and the themes of piece of literature. Symbolism in literature evokes interest in readers as they find an opportunity to get insight into the writer's mind on how he views the world and how he thinks of commonplaces, objects, and actions, having broader implications. Metaphors. A metaphor is a figure of speech that makes an implicit, implied, or hidden comparison between two things that are unrelated, but which share some common characteristics. In other words, a resemblance of two contradictory or different objects is made on a single or some common characteristics. In simple English, when you portray a person, place, or thing as an action as being something else, even though it is not actually that something else, you are speaking metaphorically. The following phrase is an example of a metaphor. My brother is the black sheep of the family. Because he is neither a sheep nor he is black. However, we can use this comparison to describe an association of a black sheep with that person. A black sheep is an unusual animal, which typically stays away from the herd, and the person being described shares some similar characteristics. However, the metaphor figure of speech is different from a simile, because we do not use like or as to develop a comparison in metaphor poems and metaphor sentences. It makes an implicit or hidden comparison, not an explicit one. So what is a metaphor? Most of us think of a metaphor as a device used in songs or poems only, and that it has nothing to do with our everyday life. In fact, all of us in our routine life speak, write, and think in metaphors. We cannot avoid them. Let's explore a few metaphors, meaning and examples, such as calling a person a night owl or an early bird, or saying, life's a journey, are all common metaphor examples, which are heard and understood by most of us. Below are some more conventional metaphors that we hear in our daily lives. My brother was boiling mad. This implies he was too angry. The assignment was a breeze. This implies that the assignment was not difficult. It is going to be a clear skies from now on. This implies that clear skies are not a threat, and life is going to be without hardships. The skies of his future began to darken. Darkness is a threat. Therefore, this implies that coming times are going to be hard for him. Her voice is music to his ears. This implies that her voice makes him happy. Let's look at some metaphors in literature. He says, you have to study and learn so that you can make up your own ideas, your own mind about history and everything else, but you can't make up an empty mind. Stock your mind, stock your mind. You might be poor, your shoes might be broken, but your mind is a palace. Frank McCourt's memoir, Angela's Ashes, is primarily about poverty in which he grew up. This lovely excerpt, however, demonstrates that he was able to conceptualize his life as having a large amount of potential. Even though McCourt was poor, he could think of his mind as a palace, and therefore have the riches beyond belief available to him. But soft, what light through all that window breaks, it is the east, and Juliet is the sun. As one of the most famous romances of all time, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet has many often quoted lines about love. In this line, Romeo uses the metaphor of Juliet being the rising sun to demonstrate his devotion. Sunrise can signify new hope, which is how Romeo views his relationship with Juliet. Furthermore, the planet revolves around the sun, and Romeo feels that his world now revolves around Juliet. Now you try. Can you explain the metaphors in the following excerpts? The sun in the west was a drop of burning gold that slid near and nearer the still of the world. But now, O Lord, you are our Father, we are the clay, you are our potter, and all of us are the work of your hand. Wishes are thorns, he told himself sharply. They do us no good, just stick into our skin and hurt us. Think about what these metaphors mean. Explain them. The answers will be found on the Metaphors and Symbolism page. So just a quick recap. Writers use symbolism and metaphors to create vivid pictures for their readers. Symbolism is when an object elicits an entirely different meaning, such as a dove representing love and peace. Metaphor is a figure of speech that makes a comparison between two objects with the uncommon characteristics, such as her mouth was a fountain of beauty. Be sure to review this video if you have any more questions or if you need another recap on symbolism and metaphors.